back with another episode with Commissioner Plus with managers Corona and manager FanDuel. We've been on the topic of championships. We've all won championships in our respective leagues, and we kind of know what we're talking about because there's a lot of commonalities and themes we see in players when we see championship rosters. Now, I want to talk about these players specifically because a lot of players week 1 through week 11 might have performed, but week 12 to the playoffs, end of the playoffs to championships, they might absolutely suck. And vice versa, where players that might have sucked are going to win it all for you. And that's what we're here to figure out. I want to bounce to manager FanDuel. Could you give me your championship winner of 2023? Who's going to win it for all the managers out there?
There's a lot of great players out there and a lot of great guys who I think can bring a lot of value to one's individual team. But the one guy for me who I think is really out there, not really talked about as much, not too much of a household name, but has been putting up stats a la like the Justin Jeffersons and the Jamar Chases, is A.J. Brown. This season, he has been on an absolute historic tear. He's been doing stuff that has actually been never seen in the hundreds of years that football's been around. Outside of weeks 2 and 11, he's put up a minimum of 15 fantasy points every single week, and that's the minimum. He's had some 30-point games, high 20-point games. He's the primary focus point of the passing attack of the Philadelphia Eagles, and he gets aided by the fact that he's got Devontae Smith on the outside, as well as a strong run game. So defenses have to be aware of DeAndre Swift, as well as the potential of Jalen Hurts running as well. So all that combined aids in the process of A.J. Brown to just be open, have more space to work with in the field of play. And he's been absolutely balling this year. The Eagles have been absolutely balling. They're 10-1. So, I see no reason why A.J. Brown should not be that guy for you. Their offense is high octane, and as long as the Eagles are flying high, I think A.J. Brown's going to be right there for you.
That's not a terrible choice, but, you're starting A.J. Brown no matter what, given any roster. However, I do want to take a look at his finals playoff schedule. He's going to be playing Seattle, New York Giants, and Arizona. You would initially think that's very, very good for him. However, the Philadelphia Eagles will likely have massive leads during those games. Those games are also week 16 and week 17. During those times, the Philadelphia Eagles might, bench some players, and their best wideout is A.J. Brown, who they want to protect for the postseason. So I want managers to slightly be careful of that. However, we have seen A.J. Brown do insane stuff over the years, this year, last year in the postseason. So I definitely like that take, FanDuel. Now moving on to Corona. Corona, who's your guy?
My guy I want to talk about is CD Lamb. So CD kind of had an okay start to the year. Wasn't performing like that. That on around that 1-2 turn people were getting him at, or they weren't getting what they got him for. But I think after the bye week, he might have told Dak Prescott that he's the face of this team, because he went on a stretch like no other with 3 games of being a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 2, getting around 15 targets a game. Lately, just got 9 and 9 past 2 weeks. He's been on a roll. He's been getting those targets, and the Cowboys keep passing that ball too as well. Now for his fantasy playoffs, Philly and Miami. Philly would be week 14, right before the fantasy playoffs start. But you get Miami week 16, and then Detroit week 17. Those 2 matchups are pretty good in terms of passing. Buffalo, it's okay, but what I'm expecting is a shootout. And for shootouts, they bring fantasy points. CD will bring you those fantasy points, and hopefully he can bring you that championship as well.
Absolutely. CD is he's a name that I kind of don't want to face on the opposite side. Especially, we've kind of seen Dak go from revive his career single handedly, maybe because of CD Lamb and how good that just team, Cowboys team, is in general. They're always just scoring so many points. CD Lamb's just seems to be the guy for Dak. So I gotta agree with you there. However, CD Lamb is also someone that I've noticed has been sort of inconsistent over his years. You draft him and you think he's that wide receiver one, but when you go back and look at his numbers, he hasn't produced up to the Tyreek Hills of the world, up to the AJ Browns of the world in the past that you just have as a top five, top four guy. My only worry about CD Lamb is just we haven't seen enough consistency over a year. Yes, he did finish very strongly last year as a wide receiver one, top 12 guy, but we haven't seen a top five finish yet. Now, this might be the season that we see that, and I'm curious to see if he remains his wide receiver three right now. I'm curious to see if he can keep that and stay as that top 3 to 5 guy. Now, moving on to my guy, who I think is going to win championship banners for a lot of managers out there, is James Cook. And James Cook is someone who has taken this backfield sort of by storm because of potentially the firing of Ken Dorsey, but also I think James Cook got fired up by Leonard Fournette getting signed. I haven't seen Leonard Fournette play a single snap. I'm not sure, but I don't think he's played a single snap. If anything, James Cook's snap share percentage and attempts and targets have gone up. This past Sunday, James Cook had 23 opportunities where he capitalized on 22 of them. And then the past weekend, or 2 Sundays ago, he had 21 opportunities. That's really all you can ask for from a running back is 20 opportunities. If the running back is getting 20 opportunities, you can feel very confident putting him in your lineup. So I would be watching James Cook very, very much this week. If he gets 20 touches, during week 14, if he gets 20 touches once again, he's someone you can start rolling out during that week 16 very good playoff matchup against the LA Chargers potentially. That he's someone you could maybe get those 5, 6, 7 PPR catches from. And we've seen how explosive James Cook is. He has 2 years in a row, he has the highest explosive rate in the NFL. We know that if he gets the ball in his hands, he can do a lot with it. So the Bills are finally opening their eyes and finally giving him those opportunities, and I'm just excited to see what happens. So if you're a fantasy manager in the playoffs, you got James Cook kind of as your RB3, I would start contemplating if he enters into your starting lineup.
So I was just going to say, I think you bring up some really great points there, Manager Easy, with James Cook. And I think one thing definitely to keep in mind is, like you brought up, is the firing of Ken Dorsey and just really the Buffalo Bills just kind of shaking apart the offense and retooling it. And obviously James Cook is a large part of that, so they're going to be utilizing him in a much different facet. However, I think the one thing that managers should just keep an eye on is where and how he's getting his points versus who he is getting them against, because he has sort of been an up and down roller coaster sort of running back kind of player, and you kind of have to bet against the odds. Is he or is he not going to be that player for you that week? And just to kind of extrapolate from these past 2 weeks, he played a New York Giants defense who is very run porous, and then he played a very run strong Philadelphia Eagles defense, where then he garnered most of his points in the passing attack, not from the running game. So we have to keep an eye on, will he be able to sustain that in the passing attack, coming up with these next strong defenses with Dallas, Kansas City, and then obviously New England in week 17. But, just something to keep an eye on. But like you kind of mentioned, I think he is definitely an interesting play and someone that is definitely going to be very matchup dependent.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring that up. Just looking at his numbers, his best games have been against the two toughest defenses, New England run defense, and especially earlier in the season, the Philly this past week. So, like, yeah, it's going to definitely depend on matchup, and even then, it's going to be hard to predict. However, I do believe if you do hit on it, it's going to be championship worthy. Now, that's going to be all for us today. Please go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below. We're here every week giving you guys the best fantasy football advice. And until next time, thank you very much.